Hey everybody, I'm Adam. 7 years ago, I quit the American dream to travel to some of the most interesting places around the world.
So I'm riding a bike here in Singapore. This is a good example of a kind of controversial subject here in Singapore. Things that people probably shouldn't do and should have some common sense not to do, but yet they still do them. And how much should the government be involved? I probably shouldn't be riding this bike while I'm talking to my phone. That's of course dumb. The question is, should you, me, and the rest of us have enough common sense to not do something like this? Or should the government tell us what we should and shouldn't do? I think you could make an argument for both, to be honest. In Singapore, there's a lot of things, like supposedly, although I've heard control and enforcement is a different story than the actual laws and rules and policies. I'm gonna stop so I actually don't get into any trouble. But there's, of course, things here that are quite famous and infamous for these strict rules, such as you're not supposed to, or it's basically illegal, to import gum here and chew gum. No drinking or eating anything at all on the public transportation, the metros, those sorts of things. Supposedly you're not allowed to be naked at all in your own place, your own apartment, your own flat, your own house, whatever you've got. And I think that even means if you're wearing just your underwear. So you can get fined for all of these things. Now, again, from what I've heard, word on the street is that the actual enforcement of these things is pretty light. The question is, can we self-regulate? And do we need the government to do these things for us? I've traveled, lived, worked, volunteered in lots of different countries. And I mean, countryside is always different than big cities. In the big cities, usually these things are quite a mess. In Singapore, in Japan, there are quite some stricter rules and stricter laws. I think in Japan, it's a bit more informal, that people just do these things naturally because it's how they're raised. It's the type of environment that they grow up in. So they just naturally don't do these things that would be disruptive to society. Whereas here, it definitely seems a bit more top-down control instead of bottom-up from the people. I've got to say, without making any sort of conclusions about how the government runs things in these places, or what level of democracy or government, or how much freedom do these people have, how much sort of liberties do they have? It certainly seems very clean, safe, secure, and quite organized and orderly in these places. And that's, of course, a very nice thing for a good standard and quality of life. That you don't have to worry about pollution, trash, litter, crimes, all sorts of stuff like that. So it's quite a fascinating thing to see happen in practice. I'm left a bit shocked and a bit confused because the way things are in a lot of modern democracies right now, whether that's the Commonwealth countries, the United States, Europe, Western Europe, Central Europe, for example, Taiwan, it certainly does seem like a lot of places where there's an extreme level of freedom and personal choice. It sure does seem like there's a lot more chaos, insecurity, pollution, disorganization. And in a place like Singapore or in a place like Japan, where seemingly there's been one party that's been controlling things and in power for quite a long time, and it's perhaps a little bit more autocratic. It does seem like things are a lot cleaner and smoother here, but it's gonna take a little bit of time to figure out what are the people experiencing and feeling here.